Hello again, and welcome back to another episode of Jefferson's Salute to the Presidents. I'm Thomas Watson, and this handsome bobblehead is my travel companion and star of the show, Thomas Jefferson. On this episode, Jefferson and I pay tribute to the life of our 21st president, Chester Arthur, who was one of the most insignificant and lackluster presidents in American history. In fact, TJ and I rate Arthur as the second worst president, behind only James Buchanan. Due to Arthur's mundane life, the bobblehead and I have been to only a few sites associated with our 21st president, which should make this episode very short and relatively pain-free. With that said, please sit back, maybe grab a plate of mugwump in a hole, a savory dish favored by Chester, and enjoy the show. This site, located roughly 5 miles northeast of Fairfield, was where future 21st President Chester Alan Arthur was born on October 5th, 1829. The yellow two-room house behind me is a replica of the home where Arthur was born. Since the beginning of Arthur's political career, however, it had been rumored the president was born in Dunham, Quebec, some 30 miles north of Fairfield. The actual birth home once stood where this large granite marker had been placed in 1903. The monument was dedicated by Robert Todd Lincoln. Lincoln served as President Arthur's Secretary of War in his cabinet. Due to the fact Chester's father, Reverend William Arthur, was a preacher, the family moved at least 7 times during the future president's childhood. Arthur did receive a good education and graduated college in 1848. After studying law for a few years, Chester was admitted to the New York bar in 1854. On October 25, 1859, 30-year-old Chester Arthur married Ellen Herndon, 22, at Calvary Episcopal Church in New York City. 20 years after their wedding, Ellen died at the age of 42 from pneumonia on January 10, 1880. Chester A. Arthur recited the oath of office in the Senate chamber of the U.S. Capitol at 11:30 a.m. on March 4, 1881, to become the 20th Vice President of the United States. Just 121 days in office, President Garfield was shot in Washington, D.C. The president lingered for another 79 days before he passed away on September 19, 1881, in Elberon, New Jersey. The death of President James A. Garfield, September 19, 1881. Located at 123 Lexington Avenue in New York City, the 5-story building on the right was home to Chester Arthur for most of his adult life. At 2:15 a.m. on September 20th, 1881, Arthur recited the presidential oath of office in the front parlor of his home following the death of James Garfield. Inauguration of Chester Arthur, September 20th, 1881. This walnut slant-top desk was in Chester Arthur's Lexington Avenue home. Arthur signed the presidential oath of office at this desk on September 20th, 1881. On September 22nd, 1881, President Arthur arrived at the Vice President's room inside the U.S. Capitol where Chief Justice Morrison Waite administered the oath of office for a second time. Shortly after becoming president, Arthur butted heads with Garfield's cabinet and most resigned, everyone except Secretary of War Robert Todd Lincoln. At the same time, President Arthur was diagnosed with Bright's disease. Although he tried to keep his condition private, Arthur's physical appearance began to show the effects of his disease. Arthur lost a lot of weight and he aged a lot, while at the same time he struggled to keep the pace of the presidency. Hostess Mary Arthur McElroy. Chester Arthur used the Lincoln Cottage as a summer White House during the hot summer months in Washington. The cottage is located on higher ground roughly 3 miles from the executive mansion. President Arthur also resided in the Lincoln Cottage during the winter of 1882 while renovations to the executive mansion were ongoing. I'm not quite sure what President Arthur did during his 3 years, 165 days in office, as no new states were admitted to the Union, leaving us with 38. Arthur was, however, known to be a sophisticated eater, often indulging in luxurious meals, including rare roast beef, turtle steak, seafood, particularly eels, macaroni pie with oysters, and of course, his mugwump in a hole. President Arthur contemplated running for a full term in 1884, but he didn't get enough support from the Republican Party to be nominated. After he attended the inauguration of Grover Cleveland on March 4th, 1885, Chester Arthur left the executive mansion and returned to his home in New York City. On November 16th, 1886, while residing in his Lexington Avenue home, Arthur ordered all of his personal and official papers burned. The next day, President Arthur suffered a cerebral hemorrhage at his home and never regained consciousness. At 5 a.m. on November 18th, 1886, Chester A. Arthur died in his home at the age of 57. A close friend said the president's last words were, "Life is not worth living." President Arthur's funeral was held 4 days later at the Church of the Heavenly Rest in New York City. Following the funeral service on November 22nd, 1886, the remains of President Arthur were transported to Albany Rural Cemetery where he was laid to rest next to his wife Ellen. 3 years later, this ornate monument was placed over Arthur's burial plot by sculptor Ephraim Kaiser of New York. In 2017, I got my first close look at the bronze angel, which was depicted placing a palm leaf on Arthur's sarcophagus. And lastly, don't you think Chester Arthur resembled Captain Kangaroo from the 1960s? Who were you expecting? Dancing Bear? Well, that's it for another episode of Jefferson's Salute to the Presidents. Thank you for hanging in there, even though this show was lackluster. Please be kind and subscribe to this channel where you can watch the shows about the other amazing presidents. And please hit that like button, even if you're only pretending to like this show. On our next episode, which we guarantee will be better than this one, TJ will pay tribute to the 22nd and 24th President, Grover Cleveland. And if you'd like to see more photos of our travels over the past 13 years and read all of the incredible stories, check out my blog called Through the Eyes of Jefferson. You can find it at eyesofjefferson.com. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon. So long.